us to do a report to the AGM, which will indeed appoint the auditor to continue for the next 1 year. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So when I see you and panelists, I think the issue here is revolving around two critical things that currently Saccos are required to do tendering every year. I think they are finding that quite tedious. So that is the issue they are raising. And then they're also saying that it would be good that once an auditor is appointed, the auditor should do at least 3 years. Probably, I think you may have to put some caveats that they can be kicked out should they fail to perform in the first, second year. It should not be carte blanche. I think those are the issues that are coming from the market, a bit from the participants. There was also an issue about classification of auditors. I think that one was addressed in the guideline very well. We had said if you are 5B and above in assets, you need 2 partners. But any other person can go sole proprietorship, but you can also still do an audit firm with 2 partners. That one's open, but it's only the size, 5B and above, 2 partners at least in the audit firm, probably for continuity. I think that was the only classification that was done. So with that, I think, Bwana CEO, Madam Director, Peter, I think you can pick the questions and then we settle on that.
I don't know.
Sorry, Bwana CEO, I think there is just one comment.
Thank you. My name is James Boy from Amica. Going by the discussions in this room this afternoon and going by my experience and observation, there seems to be an issue of capacity with the auditors that are auditing the Saccos. Because we are hearing about the big four are only 4 auditors in the market. And I hear like there is one who was not very clear last year, who could not audit. I feel like going by the presentation that you made yesterday, that you'll be training these people because to build capacity. The issue of capacity, I think, keeps coming back. Because personally, even because I've used an auditor, he's not among the big 4, but I think he could be the 5th one. And the kind of a quality work that I got from that auditor, after the 3 years, I felt like I was exposed, but again, I could not afford the big 4. But the auditors I have gotten thereafter, my assessment is that I'm not getting the kind of a quality I got from the previous auditor. So there could be an issue of capacity, and I don't know how that can be handled by Sasra. I don't know whether it is through the training that you talked about, the CPD, whatever, and all that. But I think the issue of capacity building and sanctions for these auditors so that they can also upgrade. Even me as a CEO, because I'm also not involved in the day-to-day management of the business. I have the finance manager, I have the accountants, I have all these other people, I have the branch managers and so on. I would also feel I am always looking for a very good auditor who will tell me where, who will do another job so that he can engage with us so that by the end of it, I will feel, yes, I got quality. And therefore, I feel strongly there is a problem of capacity, and I think the regulator needs to do something in that direction. Thank you.
Okay, perhaps before so that we close that, there are issues perhaps that we need to settle. I hope we are not closing it because these are big one, and those guidelines have implications. I think we do not invite ISPAC here. They know we have circulated this guideline, and as an institute, they are aware and they fully support. And I would worry less as a CEO about what the auditors think. I'll go for the best. What they think is not relevant here. You get the best. And that's what we are trying to do. So I think we need to settle it, but perhaps my colleagues have observations to make before we settle what is it we are going for, having the issue of Big Four and the like, yeah.
Thank you, Bwana CEO, and the members for the participation. Now, probably if I could speak to the issue of 3 years, I think that has really come severally in terms of starting with Hassan, who said after 2 years is when an auditor is really learning about the institution and in terms of complexity. But again, you speak to just in the same contribution, why do we have then auditors? And he did say that as Saccos, you don't sell money, it is the trust, the confidence. And how do we communicate to our stakeholders? It's through the accounts, which when you were going yesterday, it's the disclosures you put in the website or any other mode of publication that you may choose. Now, this being a very critical component in terms of governance, how would you want then a person who is auditing that institution to be able to be familiar with the institution? To what extent would having a person for more than probably 3 years breed familiarity to the extent that even as an institution, he is then not able to pick out the issues? And you find in terms of governance, that is where the restrictions come in. But the law then allows that extension can be given. Probably what we'll be then discussing is, Sasra said they can give, the guidelines proposes an extension of maybe of 1 year. And the justification then you'd be giving is part of probably, depending on the size and the complexity of the institution, you feel maybe the 3 years was just good enough for the auditor to understand the institution. And together with other justification, probably would be proposing an extension, maybe not of 1 year, but probably of 2 years. But I can assure you, even from past experience, in terms of familiarity, when you have an auditor for too long in an institution, it breeds familiarity, and sometimes when there's a changeover, there are certain things that you may then discover, even from a new auditor, which then the auditor who has stayed for long may not have understood. I would speak to it in that context when it comes to that period. And again, as had been said by my colleague Jeremiah, this is what we have in the within the legal provisions. But if there are strong proposals coming through, then with justification, then that is the point when we seek for amendments to the law. And through this forum, then we come up with the policy proposals that supports that position, and then we process that. We process it further. And because we said we settle on the auditors first, so probably I will not give comments on the others, but I'll give my colleagues opportunity on the same. Thank you. Yes. Oh, okay. Thank you for that correction. Again, when you look at probably the agenda in the that we have for the AGM, appointment of external auditor becomes a critical part of the agenda. And this, in terms of governance, is across the board. Probably procurement is not an issue that really is supposed to go to the AGM. It's a management function, not even the board. And what then proposal we could be speaking to is, do we then, after the procurement process is done, we probably just forward a name, or we say proposal that the auditor will serve for a continuous 3-year period. So now those are proposals to see how to manage that procurement process. So those are the things then we could be considering moving forward, and then we see what can we then move forward in terms of amendments. Thank you.
I think my colleague has exhausted, but what is also coming out, that even as you go back to the members for that 1 year of the auditor who has currently served you, perhaps the strong points that you have is based on the past experience that you have had with that auditor, so that you can be assisted. But you are cooperators, we also understand where we are coming from. You know the mischiefs that the law is trying to address. They are kind of abuse that we used to have, whereby perhaps out of familiarity that the auditor is not at least put into a very competitive environment with the colleagues so that you can be able to get the best. But the fact that that auditor has served you and you are happy with it, that in itself gives you an upper hand. And again, as Jeremy had said, that gives you it's a statutory requirement that it is members to approve that, among other things, including the financial statement, so to speak. Now, the other thing which is also coming out, and it is very clear, it has been asked that since we vet the auditors, then why do we give you the ones that we come again and doubt? Remember, at the end of the day, Sasra as an authority does not have direct responsibility over the auditors. And this also talks about the capacity building itself. Our direct responsibility is you, Saccos. However, the law requires us that we are supposed to be able to list them so that you can be able at least to have one layer. You can be able now to choose at least from, it might not be vetted, the term might not be vetted per se, but it's just a question of listing those who are in good standing. As an authority, we cannot be able to tell who is in good standing as far as the external auditors are concerned, other than the previous work that they did if we were not happy with it. And because of that, we get a report from ISPAC. Nabat, thank you so much while you were there. We were really collaborating with you. And also having been registered with the commissioner. Now, if these two institutions have managed to give us this list, which we've marked, we don't have any doubt. And again, based on our past experience dealing with them, we don't have any issue that we picked. There is no doubt for us to list them. And that's why we end up with over 300, like now it's over 200 lists. Now it is now upon you to go deeper. Now that at least we've done layer 1, to do now layer 2, to go deeper, take them through the procurement processes, and again, through your vetting process based on your internal processes that is available, so that you don't get a comfort and a consolation that since Sasra has done it, then let's just proceed and do it. No, that might not be the case, since at least there must be processes to be done. Now, the same goes to capacity building itself, because you are pointing out that the major issue here is how we build the capacity of these auditors. I think one of the issues and the reasons why this guideline is coming out is exactly that. So that to give a threshold, at least the bare minimum that these auditors needs to meet, so that they can be able to audit you. And this indirectly, again, throws them to build their capacity to enable them to be able to do what? To meet the threshold so that you can be audited. But again, going forward, it also comes that there should be a collaboration between us and of course the ISPAC, so that we can see how frequent these auditors can be capacity built to be able to audit you. We don't restrict, and in fact, the big four, there is no restriction. Actually, was it FRC who reported that the reason sometimes why they shy away is, one, the fact that they don't see you that you'll be meeting their invoice as far as their costs are concerned, and therefore they are looking at the business case, for instance. That could be one of the reasons. But we always insist that based on the size of your balance sheet, basically, it's ideally good that you look at the auditor who can be able to add value in terms of your performance. The other reason, which should not be quoted, but it is a fact, is sometimes you find that these big four, they are very nagging to you, and I'm not saying that the others are not strict, but sometimes you find these guys are strict to an extent whereby they don't bend. I'm not saying that you would want to bend them, but sometimes you find it difficult, especially when it comes, let's just be honest now, because we've been monitoring you. When it comes, for instance, a declaration of dividend, for instance, provision of non-performing loans, those are the areas that now there is a lot of fight. In most occasions, we've been having a lot of meetings here and there, and for some reasons, sometimes some of you don't love them, so to speak. Bonasio.
Okay, maybe final thoughts on the issue of 10 limiting number of auditees. I don't know, we remove it, we leave it open, then we monitor, or where are we leaving it? Because that's one of the issues. Because the other issue of tendering, I think what I see, and allow me to say one, I think what is coming out is you have been dealing with it within the confines of the law. How we did the 3 years, how you deal with that procurement area should be 3, I think is what is provided in the law. But I think as long as you're not, there is a question of process, which is provided in the law that you must take 3. But there's a substance, you're saying, I need this. And these people are not willing to go every year to respond. I mean, they don't have, because they know you want them, they will not complete your LFP. That's a process they don't. So, and I think I'll tell you for a fact, checking the banking industry, they are like, out there, they are the top, big 4, plus I think the second tier. I know some of you audit, those also audit banks. And you find that that process is not, as long as they are delivering on the job and you have no question, and even for ourselves, we have no concern, then I think that's something we would want to discuss, that we achieve quality, because that's really the substantive issue. Then is a trade-off you have vis-a-vis the process. If we insist too much on the process every year, then we lose it. And I think I would say we'll consider the guidelines with that in mind, but also require it is you to prove on us that the auditor you have. But when it comes to, because that, I've seen most of you do that, the annual one. I think we usually get 3, and you tell us this is the one who was appointed. I think we are just setting the bar higher. But for those who are talking of the big 4 and all that, there is something I'm learning, and which, we talk of bending the law, but you're not breaking. But in that process, you are pursuing a bigger good, as opposed to just following the process. That's something we can consider as we issue the guidelines, so that we cure that. Because we recognize in the banking industry, the big 4 largely audit, but there's one thing they do, because there are many partners. You have partners either specializing in banks, specializing in insurance companies, manufacturing. Then they can even audit you for many years until the other day, so long as the audit partner responsible is changed. Because the responsibility will be for that auditor, not the firm. The reputation will be on the firm, but the professional responsibility lies with the partner who signed those accounts. So they use that also, and it's been accepted in the banking industry because of what you are saying, because they just rotate among 4. I think the issue is to get substance, get value, get quality job without compromising. So what we are really trying to do to address is where we find the quality issues. That's what the issue of capacity building has been talked to. I'll tell you, by and large, that is institutional. It doesn't matter how many trainings ISPAC will organize, doesn't matter how many. If the institution wants to build capacity to audit you because you're also growing in complexity, they'll do it. But we'll do our bit. But our assessment, even for the Sacco industry, the question of capacity building, you as an institution have to deliberate to say, I want to invest in cybersecurity. Otherwise, it doesn't matter how many trainings you are exposed to. You got to be purposeful. You got to be deliberate to translate the learning to actually transforming your institution. So I think with those, Jeremiah, I think the issue of throwing to is the question 10 years. We agree. Do we agree we leave it open, or do you want to tag that to a number? I know we had a reason why we were tagging. I think currently we have seen people with nearly 30 Saccos, and I can tell you it's a nightmare. Even the quality of job, like my colleague said, at times it's copy-paste. So we have a reason, but I think it goes back to you as the employer of these people. Are you looking, do you know what you want? If you don't know what you want, anything will go. So the question we talked about there of TOR, that you are very clear what you want, is how you'll hold them to account. Because we have moved from a situation where they were preparers of statement, they are no longer preparers. So I want to hear final comments so that we close that. Back to you, Jeremy.
Thank you, CEO. The issue of the number of 10 years, that one we had agreed substantially, that because of the monitoring aspect as was raised in the morning, we will be able to remove that clause. Because we 10 Saccos, 20 Saccos holding AGMs over the same time, they'll appoint the same person, and they don't know. So it will be, again, tedious for them to reject, or the auditor to reject, then they have to do another AGM to appoint another one. That would not be easy. So I think that was addressed. So the issue of procurement, I think it now boils down to your procurement policy, as it were, internal procurement policies. Again, but like Rosalind has said, if we need amendment, we have to suggest it from here. We don't want to say Sasra said. Somebody is commenting here. Okay. Any other comments on the auditing issues before we close and go to the next item? Dr. Fuchs, I think has got something. Okay.
Thank you, CEO, and thank you, fellow CEOs, for your contributions. I think the issue of auditors is, as it necessitated very good discussions. And what I was looking at, I know this is being borrowed heavily from the central bank, where there are just about 10, 12 auditors who can audit banks in the country. There are not many. And we have about 32,000 accountants in this country. Out of the 32,000 accountants, about 3,000 accountants are practicing accountants. And out of the 3,000 practicing accountants, it's just about 1,000 accountants who are currently doing auditing. So they're not many. And every year, those who express desire or interest to audit Saccos, they're just about 300. So the numbers are not that large. So with 300 who have expressed interest and have gone to the Commission of Cooperative and paid the 3,000, most of them actually have complained that they're being subjected to a dual registration. Now, we will now be doing the same for Sasra, I'm almost sure that they'll complain going through 3-layer before they come to audit Saccos. For central bank, they go only 1 layer by ISPAC, then 2 by the central bank. But for the Saccos now, they'll go through the ISPAC, the Commission of Cooperative, and then now Sasra. This is being brought by the law that we do have, and we can challenge and say that then our leaders can look at the regulations and make it easier, because we want to attract the best auditors. As it is now, what I know is not many of the big 4. Actually, I think just 2, they're the ones doing Saccos. My question is, how do we encourage them? How do we encourage the big 4 to take on and audit Saccos? As you and Sacco, we've been audited by KPMG. And when we tendered for this year, none of the big 4 applied. And we had to go call them, ask them to apply. So we need to make this regulation easier for the auditors, not only the big 4, but all of them to apply. The issue of procurement is given in the law that I think is agenda number 7 or 8. Appointment of auditors is an annual activity. It has to be done every year. So that we may not actually get out of it. But then also the auditor rotation of 3 years is also a question of law. Again, we cannot run out of it. My request and suggestion then would be, as we revise regulations, it would also be important, because I'm sure I'm the one who actually sat on these regulations. We did some work on it. But it would be very good also to get ISPAC position on the same as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Any other comments on that, because we are closing on that chapter? Dr. on the issue of dual registration, I think you have to agree with us that in that respect, we are much more lenient than even the central bank. In fact, we are having for free registration. We are not even asking them a single coin to pay, which ideally we ought to ask, because it is an exercise we are going to do. But again, remember the law in 2008 said Sasra shall register, approve, and prepare a list. Ideally, what happens in the central bank and what we ought to be doing is we should be approving auditors for every Sacco individually. That is the intention of the law. We should be doing for every. But because it is not practically possible, what we do is that we have a list and we say this is a list of approved. Because the law says Sasra shall approve the external auditor. So ideally we should be doing it individually. And that's why the courts have not been very happy when we simply say we relied on the audited statements and the opinion from the external auditor, because they say there is something else you are looking for rather than just putting your stamp. So I think we hear you on the issues. You have made comments on the issues of the law that we are again saying we may consider making proposals for amendments going forward. Luckily, some of them are just in the regulations, which are probably lighter. So with that, I think, is there any other comment on this idea of all these guidelines on external auditors? Because if there's none, but with those amendments or those variations, I think we can then safely say that we are going to have them finalized, incorporate the variations and the amendments, and then issue them. And for the comfort of Anebat again, I think we have to say that we cannot wait for the institute forever. We can only write to them and tell them, give your views. They are a regulator like Sasra, and if say they are not willing to comment, can we force them? And now I'm saying that because we are in-house, and we said what happens in this hall stays in this hall. Yeah, we asked them for their comments in November last year. Up to today, they have not given us the comments. Can we wait forever? Let's move on. I think that is the reality, and I think sometimes the CEO, we have to disclose, because that is the truth. We gave them this in November last year, and they have not commented. We requested, gave them a reminder, they didn't. So from our perspective, we cannot stay forever, because again, both the Treasury, the Ministry, and when we are sued, we have to defend ourselves. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. I think there was a bit on the date that indicated that the list is ready on 15th of January, and realized that there are some circles that just do their AGMs on January. So could we maybe have the list ready 6 months before the end of the year? Or we can have it in January, but for subsequent year. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's why we were saying that by November of the previous year, they should have made an application for listing by November. And latest 15th January, the list is up. We had proposed that the list be up in December before Christmas. But I think there was a complication because some of them stated that they cannot get a receipt from the commissioner's office for the ensuing year in sufficient time if, say, we start asking them much earlier. So that was the complication that the auditors themselves were saying, that you give us time, because if it is for the ensuing year, then they have to register themselves and get a receipt for the 3,000 shillings from the Commissioner of Cooperatives. So we agree that by 15th January, we will have the list published and out. Okay. I think the house is now silent. Okay, so can we have any other issues now, so we can forget all the issues relating to auditors? That is Sharia or Shirika? Sharia.
Yeah, that's Sharia. Good afternoon, CEOs. My name is Peter Kariuki, Sharia Sacco. I want to start by appreciating Sasra. Bwana CEO, thank you so much for this unique meeting. And indeed, it has met my expectations. I also want to thank you that you have indicated that we are going to have this annually. But I further note that you have put in a question to us, how often this should be. And my thinking is, since we have just started, we could make it biannual. And then as we settle and address substantially the issues that we have, then we can move on to the annual part of it. Yesterday, there were a lot of insights that I gained, and I'm sure every one of us did, on cybersecurity and the cybercrime threats that are out there. There was the indication about how SACCOs are performing comparative to banks. The representative of Safaricom highlighted what the Kenya Bankers Association is doing and the impact it has had on the trends on crimes comparative to us. That for them, it seemed to go down even as ours stood constant. So from there, I picked lessons in terms of collaboration, how banks, though they are competitors, are working collaboratively with very little competition in terms of addressing their issues and bringing awareness to their, to their customers. And therefore, the question I ask myself is, how can we as Saccos come together? How can we as CEOs come together? I know we have a CEOs forum, and I also know that we have the Sacco Central coming up. The question would be, would this kind of championing be addressed and dealt with by the Sacco Central, or would it be better for Saccos through CEOs to come up with an organization that can be able to champion the cause of Saccos, to address matters collectively, and not to suffer in silence in our own cocoons? And as I say this, I know that the CEO will be meeting our chairpersons tomorrow. The kind of insights that we gained, they will not have an opportunity to gain it. But when you put it forward as the regulator, like Dr. Hassan said, whenever you speak, we listen. Whenever our boards hear you, they listen. So if you can be able to add a line to them and let them understand the importance of us coming together, especially CEOs, for the good of our societies, for the good of our sector, subsector, I'm sure they will buy it, even as we go to sensitize them on the same. And then we could have a way of starting off for the good of this subsector. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, Bwana CEO, I think there are questions there about how often, frequency of this meeting. Is making a proposal there about how the Sacco should organize themselves. I think that one is for them, so I don't think that it's yours. I think I can only say, though I don't speak for Sacco Central because some of them are here. I think they have got their own leadership structure, which Sasra is just an observer. So hapo pia tutawacha hapo. Wakati mkikutana nao mwaulize, pengine wanaweza kufafanua vizuri kutushinda, kwa sababu tuliwaachia hiyo maneno, wao ndio wanaendesha, sisi tuna angalia tu kwa umbali, tunawapa technical or moral support. Any other questions again? Any other question? Just any other, not necessarily on the items that we've discussed. And we are planning to end by 5 latest, so that is giving us just the next 26 or so minutes. Then we let you have your own meeting that as you had requested. Hakuna maswali?
Well, I think I don't want to leave here guessing what no CEO or Sharia has spoken, but cyber security, we have a guideline we have shared with you. We need a resolution on that. It touches on integrators. We have data showing that integrators is a pain point. We need to have some minimum standards. So can we focus on that? Even as we think about Sacco Central, you already have these people on board. As I left office on Monday, some of you are sending emails, they have been hacked. Sorry, they have been attacked. So God forbid, Madaraka is coming. Those people are planning to have a good Madaraka day. So what is the minimum? And remember, I talked about industry standards. What is the minimum? Because, and I think CEO Sharia had alluded to banking industry. And if you check the banking industry, just to recap, they issued the regulations, regulatory framework at different, I think 3 levels. Then, of course, there is a supervision. So part of what we're also trying to arm ourselves is on this, because we can deal with you as a regulatee. And we have issued the guidelines. Now we are focusing on integrators. So we need to make a guidance on that, even as we revise the other one we have, so that we have 2 guidelines that we can hold you to account as an industry. So perhaps, Jeremiah, that we need to settle that, given that there were issues that also came up around that. Like I think Frederick Musidi, we have to start somewhere. So we need to have, that's the bare minimum. Yeah, that's what we are seeking. So that after this, we get further inputs. Then, like you said, in less than 2 months, we issue it. So let's close that as well.
Okay, so there is the guidance note on the integrators. Are there outstanding concerns on it? Well, we are talking about the umbrella issue. I think, Dr. Hassan, I think that one you are sufficiently addressed, and you are told that that is just one of the many security solutions that are there. Does not limit you. It was not intended to limit anybody. It will just say that because it is a free solution currently available, you can use it as part of the many packages that you may get from the market. That's what I think was answered. But other than that, any other issues on the integrators, issues that you may have? We talked about bank guarantee. Remember that you will require them to get bank guarantee because realization of insurance, whenever they take insurance purportedly on your behalf, has become an issue, and it is your money that is getting lost. I think somebody asked the question whether any of you have ever been compensated for money lost through cyber attacks by an insurer because it was insured. Our data in the office shows negative, that nobody has been paid except probably if you have, and we have not gotten that. And that's why we said we go for the bank guarantee model, where if the integrator is breached for reasons of their own negligence, then you just call the bank and you're paid. And it was the bank guarantee was equivalent to the amount in your pay bill, the float amount. So if say you are having a float of 2 million or 30 million at any given time, then they must give you a bank guarantee of the equivalent sum. So that should there be an attack, say you lose 3 million out of the 30, then you call for 3 million out of that. So that was one of the issues that was raised there in the guidance. Then there was the issues of penetration tests, the system audits, etc. Any comment on it? Na kama haiko, yes, there is one there. Alafu tutaipitisha so that we go just do the small amendments. Remember, the integrators had already given us their part of it, but like Safaricom also said, they are the ones who we partnered with. They are the owners of M-Pesa, and we all these integrators are linked to M-Pesa. So again, for you to get the integrators to get to their system, they must meet certain minimum standards. So again, that should be at the back of our mind. Please.
Okay, thank you so much. Mine is just to request Sasra. Is there a way they can also provide for us a list of those integrators that are meeting all those requirements, just the way they've done for the auditors?
Thank you. I think that was an issue. I think going forward, because we know them, right now we have got about 25 integrators. We have a list, but sometimes I think in 2017, we published the lists of the integrators, the fintechs that were giving, these services to Saccos. And then one of the Saccos, not one of the Saccos, but one of the integrators, I don't know how it got to the media, and now started using that. It was providing like 20% of the market were with one integrator. So this guy decided to use this as a marketing tool that is the best in the market, providing everything. So Sasra got a backlash. But by making those publications, it's like we are voting for one specific institution. So that became a bit tough, and therefore we were proposing or saying we do just the guidance note giving the minimum, the irreducible minimum. Whichever integrator is able to meet those irreducible minimum is good for you. Rather than us giving the list and then mtu, kwa sababu they are not our regulators, baadaye na sheria haijasema tutengeneze hiyo list, unlike say auditors. So tukitengeneza baadaye wanaenda kuitumia kujitangaza, not just to you but to every other, other people outside there, small businesses that require integration services. Sisi ni wazuri, tumeidhinishwa na Sasra, Now you see like that. So it became a backlash again on Sasra. And then issues about unfair advantage, unfair competition came along. And that's why we were very hesitant to say we will do the list. But we were okay to do minimum, irreducible minimum. Whoever complies, then it's good for you. Then you pick from that list. But we are open again to discussions on that. Yes, please, you can make a comment on it. You can proceed.
Okay. I'm Festus, Chai Sacco. Now, I think there's something that I wanted to try and understand when Mr. Wira, I think you talked of the issue of external audit fees. I think this is one of the things maybe, I don't know, but where I sit, I've tried to do some practice, and that is what I'm using. You find when you're doing procurement, you get 3 auditors and they are quoting different prices, and you wonder now, how do you go about it? I had Mr. Wira talked about you look at like asset base and maybe do like a multiplier. So I don't know, maybe as a guideline, how maybe my colleagues are doing it, or how, from where you sit, when we are looking at the issue of external auditors, can we have maybe a kind of a guideline to assist us, maybe in looking at our budget? Sometimes when maybe you're doing an annual budget, you do what? You look at your asset base and maybe a budget for audit fees. So I think maybe it's something we can look at it so that it keeps guiding us on the financial evaluation. Financial evaluation, once maybe the procurement team do the technical evaluation. Then for integrators, I think the issue of guarantee, I think where I sit, I support it. And when you look at these integrators, I think one of the things maybe we are trying to, because I know we have them, some of us, we have integrated our systems. And when you look at the issue of insurance, that is the cash, the float we are working with, you'll find most of these integrators, they don't have what I can say, a good kind of insurance cover for that particular service. So I think the 3 items here we are trying to juggle around is that of insurance, and that one they have proposed, you have proposed for guarantee, because maybe you can remind me, I think the integrators, they are not for, Mr. Wira, they are not for the bank guarantee. Because I remember yesterday you said they are looking at putting their money aside for just awaiting for something to happen instead of using that money. So I think the issue of bank guarantee, we need to agree with it. Yes, maybe we can look at the levels, the way we are saying the float versus what they can give us. Then the other thing is what we are trying to push for some of our integrators now is the issue of downtime. I think we remember yesterday we were told by Safaricom when they feel something is wrong, they do what? They discontinue the service. But you'll find at that time, the integrator will not tell you what is happening. They'll just keep quiet. So with that, we are trying to push it in our SLA that when that service goes down, then they should be ready to do what? To compensate the Sacco, the issue, the loss the Sacco is going to incur. So I think with the kind of vehicle we are talking to try and assist us or to try and advocate for our I can call them rights or business continuity, then I think that issue of putting in the SLA that if the mistake is on the integrator, then let them understand that they are going to compensate the Sacco for the losses. Thank you.
Thank you. Okungu is my name, and I like what Festus has already said. I work for Azina Sacco. I'm in agreement totally with what my colleague has mentioned, Bwana CEO. I believe if I got you right, is that already you have had your preliminary discussions with the integrators, and there are many out there. The only bit that I want to add, because I'm satisfied that part of what we shared yesterday around the bank guarantee, the fidelity insurance, and their screening their employees, and what Festus has mentioned, I'm good with it. My bit that I want to ask the panel there is simply to give us some comfort in terms of the timelines, so that those irreducible minimums that we're going to generate from this conversation, how soon would, from Sasra perspective, insist, even as we live here, that these integrators are going to start complying with? Because you've just mentioned, actually, if I remember, we are heading into the Madaraka Day break, and people who are very busy are now sitting somewhere busy waiting for Madaraka Day. And we have integrated the businesses, we have the apps, and our money is out there. So my appeal is that from this, let us push in a way that those reducible minimums, let the integrators be given timelines. If it is within 1 month or two, wawe wako in the right space to protect the funds of the members. Thank you.
My name is Kireka from Shirika Sacco, and I want to add something on the side of integrators. Sasra is saying that you are telling us that you have the minimum requirements, and we went through them yesterday. I wanted to join my sister that I think we need to have a good conversation, because I believe that when we are looking for these integrators, we are going through the procurement process. And it would be very unfortunate if we go the whole process, then at the end of the day, we find out that this person has not qualified. So my advice is that we need also to know the list of the qualified, those that are qualified integrators, so that even as we go to the procurement process, we are sure that we are dealing with the right people. Then number two on Safaricom, because we are in-house, I think also sometimes we also get some challenge communicating with the Safaricom. Sometimes we get hard to go through. And I think because of the relationship that we are having, I hope that Sasra on this end, because sometimes you try, something have happened, you try to go through Safaricom, sometimes it is hard. So I hope that on this end, as we move forward, that Sasra will also help us in one way or the other in this, because now I can see now the relationship together with us and Safaricom is not bad. But for that one, for integrator, we need to understand on how we'll be getting this so that as we go to the procurement, we are sure that we are going on the right way.
Thank you so much. As we pick the other question from the other side, I think on the issue with the Safaricom support, we reiterate that we are in touch with them and they have been very supportive so far. And maybe going forward, I hope most of you know Presta. If you have challenges, can you always contact Presta? Because if you can't get to them, Presta will have a way of getting to them. So you can also get in touch with our guru in ICT and data analytics there. So he'll be able to assist you. But again, we are going to pick it up with Mr. Kinoti and his boss, Nicholas. Some of you have met him and he's very committed to supporting the Sacco subsector, especially with this integration and cyber threats issues. Please proceed with the question.
Elias Mainge, my name. On the integrators, I would like to request Sasra on the issue of integrators. We have three partners here where we have the Sacco, the integrator, and Safaricom. The integrator comes with a code for the API and gateway. So the API and gateway, for it to be useful, Safaricom normally tests the gateway. So at this point, if they find that the gateway is weak, they push it back to the integrator again to either decode or set the minimum that they want. So when the Sasra is setting the bare minimum, I think Safaricom has a point where they can be able to assist at least in getting a viable code that is not at least more secure. And again, mostly the fraud is with the Safaricom. But when you're doing the bank guarantees, according to the size of the Sacco, every Sacco is able to know how much they're pushing in terms of mobile money at any given point. So I believe they're able to estimate on the bank guarantee that the integrator can be able to host to be able to support on this. The insurance part, the Sacco now comes in to have insurance on when the vulnerability occurs from the Sacco through a banker's blanket board or a fidelity insurance. So I believe in advising on the integrators code, Safaricom plays a big part in this.
Thank you. I think we will start answering. Mr. Weir, I think there were questions which were directed to you. There were issues about pipelines also, on the issuance of the guidance note. Of course, there is the issue of the list still being revisited, in as much as we are saying that we need to run away from it as Sasra and give you the minimum which you send outside there for them to procure. Now, Mr. Weir.
I think the first issue was in regards to the pricing of the perhaps external auditors, if I got it right. And the suggestion was, is there a possibility of coming up with a pricing guideline in terms of what is practically possible as far as the pricing is concerned, so that SACCOs can be having where to start from? Is that that was the question? And my answer is, practically, we are living in a very liberalized market. And the procurement process that you undergo is that one that is an open tender. And therefore, it is open for the auditors to see what is economically viable for them as far as the auditing you is concerned. It might not be possible, at least to come up with a pricing guideline on what exactly auditor needs to be to charge. And if at all it was, because the lawyers, I know they have a guideline, it might not come from the Sasra, but from the ISPAC itself. So that might be a very tall order for us to address. Perhaps it's me who might not getting the meaning of this guideline, Jeremy, because the question which is coming is that how soon will we ensure that the integrators comply with this guideline? I thought this guideline, to some extent, is supposed to be like a checklist for ourselves as SACCOs when we want to perhaps bring on board an integrator, so that we check the bare minimum as provided for in the guideline, if they've met them, so that we can engage them. And if they've not, then we look for alternative who have met it. So from that angle, then the question of the timeline might not come, because it is like a checklist which is assisting me as a Sacco when I want to engage an integrator. Then from that guideline, I can be able to look for the bare minimum which they meet. If they've met, then I can be able now, in addition to my own in-house requirements, based on my needs as far as the integrator is concerned. So if I can understand the guideline along that line, that question of ensuring that integrators comply within a specific period of time with the guideline might not come. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Bwana CEO, you may add something on that. And also there is this persistent issue about the list of issuing a list of integrators, which we are running away from. Yes.
Yes, and I will still run away from it. We are not going to do that. I'm throwing this board back into your hands, and I ask again. is there a minimum you can agree? And I think it takes me back to 2015. No, 2011. 2011, there was a study done by FSD. And after that, there were an attempt to make sure that time we were focusing on the vendors, the system providers, not mobile was. As an industry, we can monitor and evaluate the performance of these integrators. The idea was that you as the industry, we agree that we shall, collaborate. And I think that time there was one audit firm, one of the big four was to be like you remember like KPMG, they do the SME 100. So they do all the secretariat, technical evaluation. They were to do that work. It was still KPMG. And you were to say, I'm with the vendor X. And then KPMG would give you a questionnaire to complete every, say, 2 years. And that assessment by 10 of you, 20 of you would form a database to build what we are discussing today, so that when you are looking for now talking to Festus and, I think the other lady, I don't remember which Sacco, but I got Festus. I didn't get your name. But that way, you go to the market, this person, based on this as market feedback, he's okay. And that was to be agreed by yourselves. That project failed. That's why we are here. Until as we take the responsibility, regulator can give regulations and regulations, but that is not the best way. The idea is we are all at different levels. Integrators, some of them provide with mobile pay, they provide with mobile loans, they provide you with mobile wallet, a variety. Other people just want a push and pull transaction. But in each, there is a risk. The deeper you go to digital space, the risk it becomes. So how do you go adjusting our, and the best people is us. So that question you're saying, for me, it goes back to you. How do we have a structured way of agreeing on some standards where we say, this is what we think. From the experience of STEAMA, from the experience of this, we think, guys, if we observe this, you'll be safe. That is how you shape standards. Telling the regulator to give you a list, then you say, this has been approved by regulator. It won't work like that. And we will not, regulator, there is no way going to do that. Even the issue of auditor, moving forward, we want to throw it to you. Then we can hold you to account, because this is a service, a professional service. It cannot be, a list is published by the regulator, this is good. No, you know yourself. And that's why I would say to that it still comes to you. And I think that is why perhaps as we look at this, what we are doing integrator is to arrest a serious problem that is persistent. But we also know the long-term sustainability will come from you, the standards we set. And for us, as I said, the minimum requirements we are setting is to give you an indication so that now it goes to you, your environment. What are the standards we shall observe as an industry? And we agree, a giant like Morimu will afford even more, but there's a bare minimum. And that is what we are seeking. So forget the question of us giving you a list. It will not happen, because technology is also very dynamic, and we don't want a situation where we are carrying reputational risk that, yeah, these were given by Sasra. That will not happen. Legally, there is no basis, neither that from where we sit, it's not a prudent thing to do. We will put the requirements on you, and that's why the guidelines we are proposing, once we issue them, we will hold you to account. Did you get an integrator who meets this requirement? Yes. Has he behaved? Has the risk gone down? Then a year down the line, we can actually say, since we adopted these standards, there is a reduction in incidences of cybersecurity. That's what we are seeking. If this is not working, for example, the issue of bankers' guarantee, you realize it is a very good thing and it will weed out jokers, but it translates to this. If 10 of you are with integrator X and you are operating 5 million, another one 10 million daily, you require a guarantee possibly of an equivalent amount. So if we are 10 of you, you are telling that integrator to say, well, but I want a guarantee of 5 million, 50 million. Is that prudent? Can we use other? So we have also to be practical, because we'll end up also committing to elements that may not be. So we need to be practical here to say, we know where the shoe is pinching. As a regulator, we have been told that we are not doing enough. And that's why we are taking this word to you. Can we agree on the bare minimum such that when you onboard an integrator, you have said, have you met these requirements? I'll do business with you. If you don't meet, sorry, I can't do business with you. You are calling them to have higher standards of, security to protect yourself. That's what we are saying. Because this guideline, once issued, us, our job will be to come and say, has he satisfied this? If he has not satisfied, the responsibility will be on you. That's the whole essence of the guideline. It's not for us to vet. We say this one's meet. It is to give you a bare minimum as an industry that we are starting here. And from there now, we can say, are we seeing improvement or not? Then we can improve so that we see the trend going down like we saw for the banks. That's really what we are seeking. And this is really and that's why the conversation should be of those guidelines. There is a background guarantee. Which ones are sticky? So that we say, let's proceed with these guidelines. Then a year down the line, we can say, is there improvement or not? Those who are not able to meet them, they fall by their side. Thank you. We can get somebody else who can do business with us because he's willing to invest in the business. So that's the context we are. So I would say, that rather than push, there is responsibility. For us, what we are seeking here are these guidelines. Do we issue them? And perhaps what is not okay, can you look at this way? Can we, just like we did for the auditor? That's really what we are seeking. So let's not deviate, beat around the bush. We give the parameters. Are we okay with them? Are we not? If we feel they are too much, you tell us. We shall deal with each institution because you have a responsibility to protect the member funds. We cannot blame third parties, but when we give you regulations, proposals to tighten, you are like flip-flopping. We have to be clear. These are the minimum we want. And that's why I'm saying, what is it we need to set as a bare minimum? So let's focus the conversation that way for us to say we have clear action points to address the risk of cybersecurity even before we come to because this will touch your environment as well. So as you guide, let's not go outside what we gave. Let's work within that and what do we remove, what we add. That to me will be more productive. Thank you.
Thank you. My name still is Marete. On the issue of bank guarantee, I would want to ask whether it is one-off. Because, to do this integration, you need to pay integration fee. It's not something that you do on an annual basis. When you integrate and you have signed that service level agreement, it runs for some time. Now, this annual bank guarantee, supposing somebody puts that guarantee for that particular purpose of just winning the business. What happens if that bank guarantee is not provided for in the subsequent years? What happens? Is the law addressing that?
Thank you. I think as you talk about bank guarantee, you should ask yourself, how is M-Pesa regulated by the central bank? You know it is regulated by the central bank. The M-Pesa component of Safaricom's business, how is it? It is simple. Anytime the money you have in the float, there is an equivalent cash or government security. Cash or government security of the money that is in the float. If Safaricom were to fail today, the monies in the float are safe. Even if the bank where that money is kept, there are only two banks, it's common knowledge, NCBA and KCB. If any of them were to fail, the money in the float is safe. Those are the principles governing regulation of what we call electronic money issuers. For us, we're saying somebody else is running our float, the pay bill. We have given, he's the one in charge because he's an integrator. The money there, he's the one responsible for. And therefore, we're saying at any given time, there need to be a bank guarantee equivalent to whatever they are having. Now, that does not mean that you are going to realize. It only put the onus on the integrator to ensure that his or her systems are so good that the money in the float or in the pay bill will never get lost. In other words, you are doing insurance by reverse osmosis. You are pushing it to the person who runs that integrator. And that's exactly what central bank did to Safaricom. They told them, okay, you go and run it, you are a telecom. But they float money. There must be an equivalent cash either in the bank or government securities held by the central bank. And that is the model that we are trying to bring here. Because the insurance aspect has a lot of problems, especially with the exclusion clauses. By the time you go to claim, you will realize your money maybe 5 years, 3 years down the line. But with a bank guarantee, it is on call. You say it is irrevocable, money got lost, and this integrator was the culprit, and we always know, for instance, the 158 million lost in 2018, 85% of it was from one integrator. And we have not realized a single coin from over the 35 circles that were affected. So where did that money go to? I think that's what we are trying to say. So it is a very simple model of regulating electronic money issuers. There was a question up there.
I propose that we undertake the proposals as guided.